I think it's time you found somewhere else to die. You're useless now." My daughter said it standing in the doorway of the house I'd kept for 43 years. Her diamond watch caught the light as she checked the time, like my packing speed was an inconvenience. Kevin, her banker husband, hauled my suitcases down the porch steps with the brisk efficiency of a man taking out the trash. That was it. 4 decades of marriage, 43 years of cooking, cleaning, hosting birthdays, nursing my husband through his illness, reduced to 2 suitcases and a shoebox of photographs. The BMW trunk slammed shut. Kevin didn't meet my eyes. "You'll love your independence again, Margaret," he said, like he was reading a line off a pamphlet. Independence. What he meant was, no more home. They drove me to the Sunset Inn, the kind of motel you could smell before you opened the door. Old carpet, lemon cleaner that didn't fool anyone. The towels were thin, the walls thinner. Victoria pressed $200 into my hand the way you'd tip a hotel maid. "This should cover you for a few days while you get settled," she said, already turning away. Settled? Into what? A welfare facility she'd circled in a brochure? My daughter was about to inherit $33 million, and she thought the Maple Street Senior Complex was good enough for me. I sat on the sagging mattress, staring at the peeling wallpaper, trying to remember how to breathe. 3 hours earlier, I was a grieving widow. Now I was a homeless woman whose only child had thrown her out like an expired prescription. But here's the thing about pawns. Sometimes, when the board is set just right, the pawn becomes the queen. And if you're hearing my story, I want you to know, you're not alone. Subscribe, share where you're watching from, and tell me your story in the comments. Because voices like ours matter. 3 days later, I was walking into a downtown law office, clutching the last of my cash for bus fare. Harrison Fitzgerald, Robert's attorney, looked up with genuine surprise. "Margaret, I was wondering when you'd come in. You were supposed to be there for the reading." My blood ran cold. "The reading?" I whispered. "Yes," he said, reaching for a thick file. "Victoria assured me you were traveling." "The reading?" My voice cracked. Harrison's brow furrowed as he pulled a thick leather file from the cabinet. His wire-rimmed glasses slid down his nose, and he peered at me with kind eyes. "Of course. Didn't Victoria provide you with your copy?" I gave her the original and several duplicates after we gathered in my office. My stomach dropped. Gathered, reading, copies, words that cut deeper than any knife. "There was no reading," I whispered. "Victoria told me. She told me Dad left her everything. The house, the accounts, all of it. She said I inherited nothing." The old lawyer's face shifted from confusion to alarm. "Margaret, that's impossible. Your husband was meticulous. He updated his will 6 months ago." His hands trembled slightly as he opened the folder. "Here, let me show you." The paper was thick, official. My husband's neat signature sat at the bottom, the ink pressed deep like he'd wanted to make sure it lasted. Harrison cleared his throat, reading aloud. "I, Robert James Sullivan, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath to my beloved wife, Margaret Ann Sullivan, our primary residence at 847 Oakwood Drive, including all furnishings and personal effects. Additionally, I leave her 70% of all financial assets, investments, and accounts, totaling approximately $23 million. I gripped the arms of the chair until my nails dug into the leather. 23 million. The house, the furniture, all of it, mine. Harrison continued. To my daughter, Victoria Sullivan Hayes, I leave $10 million to be held in trust, with distributions beginning on her 45th birthday, contingent upon her treatment of her mother following my death. He lowered the paper slowly, his gaze locking with mine. Margaret, Robert knew. He anticipated exactly what Victoria might try to do. The air left my lungs. Robert had seen her entitlement, her attitude, her dismissive eye rolls at family dinners. He'd written protection into the will. I swallowed hard. She gave me $200 in cash and told me to find somewhere else to die. The lawyer's face flushed crimson. That's elder abuse, fraud, multiple felonies. Margaret, she forged documents or presented an earlier draft. This is the legally binding will. I thought of Victoria's cold smile, Kevin's careful avoidance of my eyes as he loaded my suitcases. The daughter I'd carried, nursed, and defended had lied to my face, thrown me out of my own home, and stolen from me. Harrison picked up the phone on his desk. "We need to contact the authorities immediately, and the banks. Everything she thinks she controls will be frozen within the hour." As he spoke, something inside me shifted. The grief was still there, heavy and raw. But beneath it, a different current surged. Fury. Not the kind that burns out quickly, but the kind that crystallizes, sharp and enduring. By the time Harrison hung up, his office had become command central. "We'll call this Operation Justice," he said with a grim smile. "The police will open a fraud case. The banks will suspend every account she touched. Utilities she switched to her name, suspended pending ownership verification." The clock on the wall ticked toward 4 o'clock when my phone buzzed. Victoria. Her name lit the screen like a scar. "Mom, where are you?" Her voice was tight, frantic. "There's some kind of mix-up with the bank accounts. They're saying Daddy's assets are frozen." I steadied my voice. "Hello, Victoria? I'm at Harrison Fitzgerald's office. You remember him? Daddy's attorney? The one who read the real will to an empty room while you told him I was traveling." Silence. I pictured her, jaw tight, eyes darting. "Mom, I don't know what you think you discovered, but—" "I discovered that you're a liar and a thief. Sweetheart, your father was much smarter than you realized." "You don't understand. I was protecting you from the complexity of managing money. You've never—" "I understand perfectly. You forged documents, committed fraud, and threw your 67-year-old mother out of her home because you thought I was too stupid to notice." Her tone turned desperate, sharp around the edges. "Mom, please, you're confused. The grief, someone's taking advantage of your emotional state." I let her words hang in the air, the audacity almost laughable. "Victoria, dear, let me clarify something. Not only did you never inherit anything, but the 10 million your father left you, your actual inheritance, is mine now. Thanks to that lovely clause about treating me with dignity and respect." "That's impossible," she snapped. I held the phone away slightly so Detective Rodriguez, seated across from me, could hear. "Detective, would you like to explain the impossibility of fraud charges?" Victoria's breath hitched. For the first time, she sounded afraid. "Mom, can we meet? Talk about this reasonably? We can work something out." "Oh, we'll meet," I said, my voice colder than I thought possible. "At the courthouse, when you're arraigned. You wouldn't dare press charges against your own daughter." I closed my eyes, letting the silence stretch until it cut. "Watch me." I hung up and placed the phone on the lawyer's desk. Harrison was watching me with something like pride. Rodriguez scribbled notes, her mouth a thin line of satisfaction. "How long before she's arrested?" I asked, my voice steady. Rodriguez snapped her notebook shut. "We already have enough evidence for a warrant. They'll pick her up tonight, around 8:30. I pictured Victoria sitting at some fancy restaurant, sipping wine, laughing, celebrating her supposed victory. The image gave me no comfort, only a grim, electric anticipation. By the time I stepped out of Harrison's office, the city evening lights were flickering on. I pulled my coat tighter, the chill biting my skin. Somewhere across town, my daughter's world was beginning to collapse. And for the first time since Robert's heart stopped, I felt something like power return to my bones. "They'll pick her up tonight." Those words echoed in my ears as I left Harrison's office. The city air smelled like rain and exhaust, the sidewalks shining with the first drizzle of evening. People hurried past me with umbrellas and shopping bags, unaware that somewhere across town, my daughter's world was about to detonate. I could almost picture her, perched at a white linen table in some expensive restaurant, swirling wine, certain she'd won. She had no idea that at 8:30, detectives would walk in with handcuffs. Back in my motel room, the Sunset Inn seemed less suffocating. For the first time in weeks, I slept with a thin smile tugging at my lips. By morning, the news was already circulating. Harrison called me just after dawn. His voice carried a restrained satisfaction. Margaret, they arrested her last night at Leonard, right in the middle of dinner. Apparently, she caused quite a scene. I pictured it. Silverware clattering, other diners staring, Victoria screaming about a false arrest, while officers clicked cold steel around her wrists. And Kevin? I asked. They're moving on him this morning. The forged documents tie back to his office's printing company. By noon, he'll be in custody. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at my 2 suitcases. In less than 24 hours, everything had flipped. But Victoria wasn't finished with me. At 7 sharp, the doorbell rang at the Oakwood house, my house, and I opened the front door for the first time in weeks. Victoria stood there in yesterday's clothes, mascara streaked, hair limp, eyes bloodshot. She looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight. "Mom, please, we need to talk." I stepped outside but didn't invite her in. The morning air was crisp, sunlight slanting across the porch. For a moment, we just stared at each other, mother and daughter, battlefield drawn. "We talked yesterday," I said evenly. "You told me to find somewhere to die. I found somewhere to live instead." Tears welled in her eyes. "I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but I'm still your daughter." "Are you? Because daughters don't forge wills and throw their mothers into budget motels." Her lips trembled. "I wasn't stealing. I was—" She cut herself off, searching for words that didn't sound criminal. "You were what, Victoria?" She exhaled shakily. "I was trying to protect you. You've never handled large amounts of money. You don't understand investments. Even with charges pending, she couldn't stop patronizing me. Couldn't stop spinning a story where she was the savior and I the fragile fool." "Victoria," I said, my voice steady, "your father worried about this exact thing. 6 months before he died, he told me he was concerned about your entitlement. He changed the will because of you." She flinched, face draining of color. "Daddy never said that. He said you reminded him of his sister, charming, beautiful, and incapable of caring for anyone but yourself." "That's a lie." I pulled out my phone. "Actually, it's not." I tapped the screen. Robert's voice filled the morning air. His tone was calm, deliberate, each word honed like a blade. "If you're hearing this, Victoria, it means my fears were justified. I hoped I was wrong. I hoped my daughter had integrity. But if Margaret is playing this recording, you've proven me right in the worst possible way." The words sliced her open. She sank onto the porch steps, sobbing. Ugly, broken sounds. Nothing like the polished tears she used to charm her way through life. "He hated me," she whispered. "No," I said softly. "He loved you enough to hope you'd prove him wrong. You chose to prove him right instead." Her head dropped into her hands. "What happens now?" "Now you face the consequences, the fraud charges, the investigation, the humiliation when this story hits the news." "The news?" "Channel 7 wants to interview me about elder financial abuse. I'm considering it." Her face crumpled further. "Mom, think about the grandchildren. Think about Kevin's career. Please." I crossed my arms. "I am thinking about it, about how you never considered any of those things when you committed multiple felonies." For the first time, her mask cracked into honesty. "I just wanted the money, the security, the status. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "I believe you," I said, "but wanting doesn't justify destroying." Her tears dripped onto the porch wood. "I deserve this, don't I?" "Yes, Victoria, you absolutely do." 3 days later, another knock on the Oakwood door. This time, it wasn't my daughter. It was her mother-in-law, Eleanor Hayes. She arrived like a queen entering her court. Perfect hair, layered pearls, perfume thick as smoke. Without waiting for an invitation, she swept into my living room, lowering herself into the armchair as if granting me an audience. "Margaret, we need to discuss this rationally," she began, her voice dripping with entitlement. I folded my arms. "Do we? Kevin made some poor choices. Prosecuting him seems vindictive." "Vindictive?" My laugh was sharp. "He helped steal $33 million from me." Kevin was following Victoria's lead. He didn't understand the full situation. "Mrs. Hayes, he created forged legal documents. That's not following. That's conspiracy. Her polished smile never faltered. His lawyer believes we can reach a settlement that benefits everyone. You get your house back. Victoria faces appropriate consequences. Kevin avoids the publicity of a trial. Appropriate consequences? As if forging legal papers is a parking ticket? She leaned forward, pearls clicking softly. We're prepared to compensate you for your inconvenience. $2 million. I stared. $2 million to forgive a $33 million crime? Margaret, be realistic. Kevin has a career, children, a reputation. Sending him to prison serves no one. It serves justice. For the first time, her mask slipped. Her eyes sharpened. Justice? You're destroying multiple families over money you'd never manage properly anyway. There it was, the same condescension Victoria had perfected. In their world, I was just the help who'd gotten uppity. We're done here, I said, standing. She rose slowly, regaining her composure. Very well. $5 million. Final offer. My heart thudded at the number. $5 million. But my voice didn't waver. No, her smile returned, thinner, sharper. Then perhaps Kevin's legal team should share what they've uncovered about Robert's business practices, information that might make you reconsider who the real criminal was. A threat, clear as day. She swept out, heels clicking like gunshots. That night, I sat alone in Robert's study. The room smelled of old leather and pipe tobacco, his careful order still lingering. Files lined the shelves, labeled in his precise handwriting. I opened one, then another. Consulting contracts with shell companies, payments that led nowhere, consulting fees that bloomed like rot. The longer I read, the colder my skin grew. Carol Chin, the private investigator Harrison recommended, arrived with her camera and quiet focus. She spread documents across the desk, snapping photos, tracing patterns. Mrs. Sullivan, she said finally, her voice firm, your husband was laundering money, millions, for organized crime. At least 12 years, probably longer. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. That's impossible. Robert was the most honest man I knew. I'm sorry, but the evidence is overwhelming. I stared at the neat columns of numbers, the fabricated contracts, the phantom firms. How long has this been going on? She tapped her pen on a ledger. At least since 2008, maybe before. 12 years. While I was hosting dinner parties, tending his illnesses, ironing his shirts, he was laundering money for criminals. Carol's eyes softened. There's more. The $10 million Robert earmarked for Victoria? It came directly from laundered funds. If the FBI finds this, they'll seize everything, house, investments, all of it. The study blurred. My hands gripped the edge of the desk to stay upright. Unless, she added carefully. Unless what? Unless Victoria and Kevin's lawyers already know. If they tip off the FBI, they might cut a deal. Immunity in exchange for cooperation. You'd lose everything anyway. I pressed my palms to my temples. My daughter and her husband weren't just thieves. They were holding a nuclear weapon over my head. My phone vibrated. Victoria. Mom? Her voice was low, urgent. We need to meet tonight. There are things you need to know about Daddy. Things that change everything. I already know, I whispered. Silence stretched. You know what? I know about the laundering, the criminal connections, that everything he left us is tainted. A sharp inhale. Then you know Kevin's lawyers are talking to the FBI. They can get us immunity. You'd keep the house. $5 million in clean assets. The rest goes to the government. We all walk away. You're asking me to help you profit from your crimes by exploiting your father's crimes. I'm asking you to be practical. Otherwise, you could lose everything. Even face charges yourself. I hung up and stared at the files spread across the desk. My husband's handwriting, my daughter's betrayal, my son-in-law's schemes. 43 years collapsing into lies. But one thought cut through the chaos. They still underestimated me. I picked up my phone again. Carol, I said, my voice steady. How fast can you arrange a meeting with the FBI? The FBI conference room was too bright, the overhead fluorescents buzzing faintly like a swarm of angry bees. Harrison sat beside me, his posture calm, but his jaw tight. Across the table, Special Agent Sarah Martinez adjusted her recorder, every movement crisp, professional, immune to any attempt at charm. "Mrs. Sullivan," she began, her pen poised over a yellow legal pad, "you understand that by coming forward, you're admitting you may have benefited from criminal proceeds?" I folded my hands on the table, the skin at my knuckles pale and thin. "I understand, but I'd rather tell you the truth than let my daughter and her husband use it against me." Martinez nodded once. "Tell us everything." So I did. Robert's files, the shell companies, the consulting contracts that weren't real, the late-night call from Victoria offering me $5 million and a clean slate if I cooperated. Kevin's quiet confidence that he could negotiate immunity. I laid it all out, every sordid detail. When I finished, Martinez clicked off the recorder. For the first time, she looked directly at me, her gaze sharp and appraising. "Are you afraid, Mrs. Sullivan?" I took a deep breath. 2 weeks ago, I was sleeping in a budget motel with 2 suitcases to my name. Today, I'm confessing to federal agents about my dead husband's double life. Fear isn't my primary emotion anymore. Her brows lifted slightly. Then what is? Anger. Pure, crystallized anger at being underestimated for decades. For the first time, Martinez smiled. A thin, professional smile, but it carried weight. "Good, because I'm going to ask you to do something difficult. Would you be willing to wear a wire?" The room seemed to tilt. My heart thudded. "You mean, meet with them?" "Yes, Victoria and Kevin think they're negotiating a private settlement with you. We'd like to record that meeting. It could lock in charges for wire fraud, elder abuse, even attempted extortion of a federal witness, but it will be risky." I pressed my palms flat against the table, grounding myself. "Risky how?" "They may try to pressure you. They may threaten you. But you'll have backup nearby. You won't be alone." I glanced at Harrison. His steady nod was all the reassurance I needed. "I'll do it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. 3 hours later, back in my house, the house Victoria had tried to steal, I stood in front of the mirror while an agent adjusted the small recording device beneath my blouse. The wire was taped against my skin, the edges rough against my ribs. "Check 1, 2. Martinez's voice crackled through a hidden earpiece. "Clear," came another agent's reply. I caught my reflection. Hair pulled back, lines etched deep around my mouth, eyes steady. I looked nothing like the widow Victoria thought she could bully. The living room smelled of fresh paint and dust from the renovations Victoria had planned, but never started. My hands shook only once, when I poured a glass of water and set it carefully on the coffee table. "They'll be here at 8, I said into the empty room. Martinez's calm voice filled my ear. "We'll be outside. The moment we have what we need, we'll move in." At 7:59, headlights swept across the window. A black sedan pulled into the driveway, sleek and polished. My pulse hammered as footsteps approached the porch. The knock was exactly on time, 3 sharp raps. I opened the door. Victoria stood there in a tailored coat, her hair styled, makeup flawless, trying to look like she hadn't spent the last 48 hours unraveling. Kevin loomed behind her, briefcase in hand, his banker's smile thin and controlled. "Mom!" Victoria said brightly, kissing my cheek like nothing had happened. "You look better than you have in weeks." "I feel better," I replied. "Clarity does that." They followed me into the living room. Kevin placed his briefcase on the coffee table with the precision of a man about to close a deal. He snapped it open, revealing neatly stacked documents. "Margaret," he said smoothly, "our lawyers have structured this favorably for you. You retain the house, $5 million in clean assets, and complete immunity from any charges related to Robert's activities." "Clean assets," I repeated softly, letting the words roll on my tongue like poison. Victoria shot him a warning look, but plastered on her smile. "The important thing is that we're all protected. We put this behind us. We move forward." I leaned back, folding my arms. "And the $33 million Robert actually left me?" Kevin's tone stayed calm, almost patronizing. "That money is tainted. Impossible to separate from the laundering. $5 million is the best possible outcome." "And you two?" I asked. "What do you get out of this arrangement?" Victoria's eyes flickered. Kevin cleared his throat. We get to move past this unfortunate misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I let the word hang, cold and heavy. Forgery? Fraud? Throwing your mother into a motel? That's a misunderstanding? Kevin's jaw tightened. Margaret, this is about practicality, not emotions. If you cooperate, we all walk away intact. I leaned forward slowly, my voice low and deliberate. Kevin, help me understand something. When exactly did you discover Robert's criminal activities? Before you married Victoria? Or only recently, while planning to steal my inheritance? His eyes narrowed. That's not relevant to this discussion. Actually, it's very relevant, because if you knew before, that makes you an accessory. And if you only discovered it during your fraud, that makes you remarkably unlucky. Victoria's mask slipped for a moment, panic flashing in her eyes. Mom, what are you getting at? I sat back, my heart steady now. I'm getting at the fact that you've been planning this for months, maybe years. The forged will, the discovery of laundering, even your connections to document forgers. None of it was spontaneous. That's ridiculous, Kevin snapped. Is it? I tilted my head. Agent Martinez finds it quite plausible. The color drained from their faces. Kevin's voice dropped to a whisper. Agent Martinez? FBI, I said simply. For a second, silence filled the room. Then Kevin shoved the briefcase shut, standing abruptly. This conversation is over. Actually, I said, my pulse calm as stone. It's just beginning. The front door burst open. 2 agents swept in, weapons holstered but authority radiating from every movement. Martinez stepped into the living room, badge flashing. Victoria Sullivan Hayes. Kevin Hayes, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, elder abuse, and attempted extortion of a federal witness. Victoria's face contorted. Mom, how could you do this to your own family? The same way you could forge documents and throw me out of my own home. I replied evenly. Except my way is legal. Kevin tried one last desperate play. Margaret, you don't understand. Robert was connected to people who won't appreciate federal attention. You're in danger now. Martinez paused in reading their rights. Mr. Hayes, are you threatening a federal witness? I'm warning her about reality. He spat. The reality, Martinez said coolly, is that you've just added witness intimidation to your charges. Cuffs clicked around their wrists. Agents confiscated phones, the briefcase, every scrap of their false confidence. As they were led toward the door, Victoria twisted to look at me, mascara already streaking. Her eyes were wide, wild, betrayed. But I felt nothing except the solid weight of my own breath. After the front door shut behind them, the room seemed impossibly quiet. Martinez settled into the armchair Victoria had just occupied, a thick file folder in her lap. Mrs. Sullivan, she said gently. Kevin's warning might not be entirely empty. Your husband was connected to dangerous people, the Torino crime family. They've laundered money through legitimate businesses for decades. My stomach clenched. Are you saying I'm in actual danger? Potentially. But there's something else. Something that changes everything. She opened the file, the pages thick with records. Your husband wasn't just laundering. He was an FBI informant. For 12 years, he provided us with intelligence while maintaining his cover. The money he left you came from federal cooperation agreements. It's legitimate. The world tilted sideways. Robert, my Robert, had been living a double life. Martinez's eyes held mine. The $33 million is yours. Legally. Your husband's cooperation led to 47 arrests, $200 million in seizures. He was one of our most valuable assets. I pressed my hand to my mouth, the room spinning. All the lies, all the secrets, and yet, somehow, vindication. Martinez closed the file. The choice now is yours, Mrs. Sullivan. What kind of life do you want to build? The question hung in the air long after the agents left, long after the flashing police lights disappeared from the driveway. I sat alone in the living room, the wires still taped against my skin, Robert's shadow stretching across decades of deception. I whispered into the silence, almost to myself. So, what kind of life do I build now? The question still echoed in my head hours after the agents left. The wire's adhesive itched against my skin, and I peeled it away slowly, like stripping off the last remnant of the powerless woman I had been. But the night wasn't finished with me. The phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Mrs. Sullivan? This is Janet Cooper with Channel 7 News. We've confirmed the arrests of your daughter and son-in-law. Would you be willing to share your story? It could help other seniors spot financial abuse. Her words sliced through me. Public. Visible. A story, not just a crime. I told her I'd think about it. For the first time, I considered what it meant to take control of my own narrative. By morning, the newspapers carried headlines. Prominent banker. Wife arrested in fraud scheme against elderly mother. Their photos were splashed across front pages. Victoria's practiced smile frozen in shame. Kevin's jaw tight. Harrison called. They're both arraigned. Victoria's bail set at $50,000. Kevin's at $200,000. Neither has access to frozen accounts. They'll be begging for help. Begging. The irony nearly made me laugh. It didn't take long. At 7 a.m., my doorbell rang. Through the glass, I saw her, Victoria. Yesterday's clothes, eyes hollow, shoulders slumped. She looked like she'd spent the night crying in a jail cell. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. What do you want? Her voice cracked. Mom, please, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need to explain. I never meant for it to go this far. You forged legal documents, stole $33 million, and told me to find somewhere to die. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I thought I was protecting you. You've never managed this kind of money. You're still lying, Victoria. You wanted control. You wanted status. Admit it. She swallowed hard. Yes, I wanted the money. I wanted to never feel small again. But I'm still your daughter. Are you? I whispered. Because daughters don't destroy their mothers, she sobbed, collapsing on the porch steps. What happens now? Now? You face the consequences. 2 days later, a new visitor came. Eleanor Hayes. Perfectly coiffed, pearls gleaming, the scent of expensive perfume trailing behind her. She made herself comfortable in my living room as if she owned the place. Margaret, she said smoothly, we can resolve this. Kevin is a respected man. Prison would ruin his career. Surely you don't want that. I folded my arms. He forged documents. He conspired with my daughter. He deserves prison. Her smile thinned. Be realistic. We're prepared to compensate you. $5 million, final offer. Drop the charges. I stared at her. $5 million to forgive $33 million in theft? Her eyes glinted. Think carefully. Kevin's lawyers have uncovered irregularities in Robert's business. Do you really want that dragged into the light? Her words tightened like a noose. Are you threatening me? I'm giving you options. After she left, the silence in the house pressed heavy. The files in Robert's study weighted like landmines. That night, I combed through Robert's ledgers until my hands shook. Carol Chen sat across from me, snapping photos, her sharp eyes scanning. Mrs. Sullivan, she said finally, it's money laundering, at least 12 years, millions. The words hollowed me out. Robert's neat handwriting, the man who'd kissed me goodnight for decades, suddenly felt like evidence against him. Carol's voice stayed calm. The FBI will seize everything if they prove it, unless Victoria and Kevin get there first and cut a deal. My phone buzzed. Victoria. Her voice was urgent, calculated. Mom, we can fix this. Kevin's lawyers are negotiating. You keep $5 million in the house. The fraud charges disappear. We all walk away. You're asking me to profit from Daddy's crimes. I'm asking you to be practical. Otherwise, you lose everything. I ended the call. My hands shook, but my decision was clear. Carol, I said, set up a meeting with the FBI. I'm done being their pawn. The next evening, the living room became a stage again. Victoria and Kevin arrived, smug, believing they held the winning card. Kevin's briefcase gleamed under the lamp, filled with immunity papers. Margaret, he began, voice oily. This deal is generous. $5 million in clean assets. Immunity. Your troubles end tonight. I tilted my head. Clean assets? Interesting phrase. When exactly did you discover Robert's laundering? Before you married Victoria? Or while planning to steal from me? Kevin stiffened. Victoria shot him a frantic look. "Margaret," he said carefully, "that's irrelevant." "Actually," I said softly, "it's very relevant, because Agent Martinez agrees." Their faces blanched. Kevin's lips parted, a whisper. "FBI?" The door burst open. Agents poured in, badges flashing. "Victoria Sullivan Hayes, Kevin Hayes, you're under arrest." Victoria screamed. "Mom, how could you? We're family!" "The same way you could betray me," I replied coldly. "Except my way is legal." The courtroom buzzed weeks later, every seat filled, reporters scribbling. Victoria sat at the defense table, pale, her once perfect posture slumped. Kevin's lawyer shuffled papers nervously. The judge's gavel echoed. "Charges, wire fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy, attempted extortion." I sat behind the prosecution, spine straight, hands steady. For the first time in months, I wasn't invisible. During testimony, Harrison laid out Robert's will. Every clause, every contingency. Detective Rodriguez detailed the forged documents, the frozen accounts. Agent Martinez played the recordings from my wired meeting. My voice on tape, calm, deliberate, refusing to yield. Victoria's sobs filled the courtroom when Robert's video was played. His voice, measured and devastating, cut through her defenses like a scalpel. "If you're hearing this, it means you proved me right." The jury's eyes widened. No one missed the impact. Kevin tried to object, to redirect, but the evidence piled high. The forged signatures, the printing company linked to his office, the financial patterns. By the time the prosecution rested, their guilt was undeniable. Outside the courthouse, microphones thrust toward me. Reporters shouted questions. "Mrs. Sullivan, do you feel vindicated?" I looked past the cameras, at the gray sky above the courthouse steps. "I feel like a woman who stopped being underestimated. That's all." That night, alone in my kitchen, I poured a glass of wine. The house was quiet, but not empty. Not anymore. It was mine, truly mine. The phone buzzed with a new text. Victoria. "Mom, please don't do this. Think about the grandchildren." I stared at the screen, then typed back. "I am thinking about them, and they deserve to see what happens when you steal from family." Weeks blurred into hearings, motions, filings, but the outcome was set. Guilty pleas, negotiated sentences, 18 months apiece. I visited the house daily during renovations, reclaiming each room. Robert's study became my art studio. The planned wine cellar became a library. Every choice was mine. But the fight wasn't just about paint and furniture. It was about rewriting the story. Channel 7 aired my interview. Elder Abuse in Plain Sight, a mother's story. My face filled the screen, my voice steady as I urged other seniors to trust their instincts, to fight back. For once, my words mattered. The night before sentencing, I stood in the studio surrounded by canvases. Paint streaked my hands. The air smelled of turpentine and fresh possibility. I thought of Victoria, alone in a cell, still convinced she could charm her way out. I thought of Kevin, his banker's mask crumbling under the weight of criminal records. And I thought of Robert, my husband, who had balanced love with deception, secrets with protection. "Pawn to queen," I whispered to the empty room. And the game isn't over yet. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed through my new kitchen windows. Real windows, ones that actually opened, something Robert had always dismissed as unnecessary. Sunlight spilled across the countertops I had chosen myself. Pale marble veined with gray. For the first time in 43 years, every surface in this house reflected me. Not him, not his tastes, not Victoria's ambitions. "Good morning, Margaret." I looked up to see Sarah Chen, Carol's sister and my new financial advisor, stepping into the kitchen with a thick portfolio. She set it down on the breakfast table and smiled. "Ready for your quarterly review?" I poured us both coffee. "Ready?" The past 6 months had been a blur of headlines, courtrooms, and reconstruction. Victoria and Kevin each serving 18 months in federal prison. Reporters chasing me, strangers stopping me at the grocery store to whisper, "You're so brave." Me, brave. The woman who once sat sobbing on a sagging motel mattress. Sarah flipped through her papers. "Your foundation is fully funded. The first scholarship checks have gone out. Legal aid clinics are reporting an influx of seniors seeking help. They're calling it the Sullivan effect. I laughed softly, shaking my head. Who would have thought? The Margaret Sullivan Foundation for Elder Protection had become my life's work. $15 million of my inheritance directed toward making sure other mothers, other widows, never sat helpless while their children stole from them. And the documentary? Sarah asked. Netflix starts filming next month. I tried to keep my voice casual, but the truth was, it thrilled me. Not for the fame, but for the chance to make noise loud enough that people couldn't look away. Victoria had written me 17 letters from prison. At first I read them. Excuses, apologies laced with manipulation, claims of misunderstanding. By the 5th, I stopped opening them. Her lawyer says she wants to meet when she's released, Sarah said carefully. I sipped my coffee, letting the silence stretch. I don't doubt it, but some relationships aren't repairable. She made choices. She can live with the consequences. She's still your daughter, Sarah ventured. I shook my head. She's DNA. Family protects you when you're vulnerable. She exploited my grief to line her pockets. That's not family. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled up the driveway. A man in a brown uniform carried a large package to the porch. I signed for it, feeling the solid weight in my arms. Furniture for the studio. Robert's den was now my art space, filled with canvases and brushes, jars of pigment lined up like soldiers. I unwrapped the box while Sarah packed her portfolio. Inside was a new easel, tall and sturdy, perfect for the self-portrait I'd been painting. Me, standing in sunlight, head high, eyes steady. After Sarah left, I wandered the house slowly. The living room, no longer Robert's shrine, now bore bookshelves I'd chosen. The library, where a wine cellar had been planned. The studio upstairs, drenched in light, filled with the smell of paint and wood. Every step reminded me, this was mine, my home, my story. I paused at the canvas. The woman looking back at me was nothing like the widow who once clutched 2 suitcases outside the Sunset Inn. She wasn't begging for scraps of dignity. She wasn't invisible. She was powerful, independent, unafraid. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming everything your enemies never thought you could be. That evening, I sat on the porch swing with a glass of wine, watching the sun melt into the trees. My phone buzzed. A message from an old friend, congratulating me on the foundation. Another from Channel 7, asking for a follow-up interview. The world finally saw me. Not Robert's wife, not Victoria's mother. Me. But more important than recognition was peace. The kind that comes from surviving betrayal and still finding yourself intact. I thought about the grandchildren. One day they'd ask questions. One day they'd want answers about why their mother went to prison. When that time came, I'd tell them the truth. Not to shame them, but to free them from the cycle of entitlement. As the stars blinked on, I found myself smiling. Not because everything was perfect, life rarely is, but because for the first time, I was steering. I raised my glass to the darkening sky. To pawns who become queens. Then I turned toward the camera of my own story, the one I share with all of you. Because this isn't just about me. It's about every person told they're useless, every senior shoved aside, every parent betrayed by the child they sacrificed for. If you've lived through something like this, know that your voice matters. Share your story in the comments. Subscribe, like, join us here at Family Power Stories. Not because of algorithms or numbers, but because together we remind the world. Dignity doesn't retire. Respect doesn't expire. And family is chosen through love, not blood. Tomorrow, I'll step back into my studio, pick up a brush, and add light to that portrait. A woman standing tall in her own house, on her own land, with her own future. And I'll keep painting until the canvas tells the truth I've finally come to believe. I am not just a survivor. I am the author of the life they tried to steal.